bottom line, the Stone Cold Sensei.
I have a lot of things I want to get off my chest.
This is The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast starring Renny D and friends. Thanks for listening to The Pencil. Subscribe to the show on iTunes and follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast.
Hey, this is Chris Jericho. You're listening to The Pencil with Renny D. Pencil, baby. He's a pencil. Yeah, boy.
What's going on, everybody? It's The Pencil, the professional wrestling podcast, coming at you, episode 19 this week. As always, this is a listener and a fan-supported podcast. Go ahead and do us a favor, subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or however you get your podcasts. And go ahead and do us a favor as well. Share us on any social media platform you're using, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Vine. I don't know, Dirt. What else are these kids using nowadays?
If they're using Instagram, I'll send some pics to our fucking Twitter gimmick, so then they can put pics of me on there. We know that's going to up the listenership every week.
Up the listenership every week, and this week our guest is Dysfunction, also known as the Weedman and Juggalo Championship Wrestling, King of the Death Matches, which is a very interesting concept in professional wrestling. I myself am not a huge fan of it, but it definitely takes a man with gigantic nuts to get in the ring and do a death match. Now, Dirt, you did some, I guess, research on death matches today. What would you think, or what is your first initial reaction when you read about these, quote, death matches in the world of independent professional wrestling?
When I looked it up initially, I was anticipating hearing about kind of hardcore matches, things that we saw on TV in the late 90s, early 2000s with Al Snow or some of those other guys that did a lot of those hardcore things. But reading about it, it just sounds fucking crazy is what it sounds like. If you've never heard what happens in a death match, the types of death matches that there are, you're going to want to listen to Dysfunction later in the episode because it is quite entertaining. It's crazy. People like you and I might not understand it, but it's not for us. It's for people that enjoy that type of stuff. So if you're a hardcore legend, if you're a hardcore fan, keep on listening.
Yeah, keep listening because you got to keep in mind that these dudes going out there going through light tubes and tables with thumbtacks taped to it or whatever the hell it is, they probably don't have health insurance and they have no idea what the guy next to them has in their body. So you're taking a risk even before you get into the ring, not knowing that you don't have these certain safe nets, I guess, in your life to back you up. But whatever, just do us a favor, listen to the second part of this episode. Dysfunction is a great guest on, gives us a little Wisconsin taste on professional wrestling. But Dirt, I wanted to touch base with you because we talk a lot about me and my professional wrestling career on this podcast. I'm going to take the listeners back to University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, 2005. You and I first met, 7th floor, Towers North, fucking ripped it up, living the dream, but we had a communications class together. Basically, we had to sit in front of the room and give speeches all the time. And I know you remember this probably clear as day, but one of the first speeches we had to give, we had to find somebody in the class to introduce us to the class, and Dirt, you and I picked each other. And you went up there, and I remember this like yesterday. You said, coming up next is Ryan. He does this professional wrestling thing. I really don't understand it, but he's going to tell you about it. Now, that's in 2005. Fast forward to 2014, here you are on the other end of a telephone line with me doing a professional wrestling podcast.
Look at how far we've come.
You definitely understand professional wrestling now. I never really asked you, I don't think we ever got into it on the podcast. When did you actually, or what got you back into pro wrestling? Was it the fact that I was doing it, or were you channel surfing one day and you saw something and you stuck to it? It had a lot to do with the fact that you were doing the amateur stuff and you were not amateur. You were doing the professional stuff in Minnesota, in Wisconsin. I got to know you. You started explaining it to me more, and it just brought up the kid in me again, the one that loved Stone Cold and the one that loved The Rock and wanted to watch Goldberg every Monday night. So I wanted to see what was going on in today's WWE at that point. So I was like, I'll catch it every now and again. I'll see what's happening. I got into reading Bleacher Report every now and again. And I didn't, even after meeting you in 2005, I don't think I really got into it until 2011 again fully, because
I didn't think the product was very good between 2005 and 2011. Even when I tried to read it, tried to watch it, it wasn't interesting to me. But here I am, 2014, going on 2015, and I'm getting ready for the road. So I mean, I'm all in now. I'm all in now.
You're on your way, and you got into professional wrestling hardcore more so 3 years ago. I've never been into MMA fighting really at all. I mean, if it's on TV, I'll watch it. The shit's kind of brutal. Kudos to these guys knocking each other out. It's awesome. But now that CM Punk joins UFC, are you at all enticed to watch Ultimate Fighting Championship, especially when Punk makes his UFC debut?
I am. I'll say this in two parts. I've never been into UFC. I think part of the reason I'm not is because I'm not attached to the characters. Much of the reason that people like WWE is because of the characters, because of the guys that you can get to know, and you know stuff about them either out of the ring or throughout their careers. I don't know anything about the guys in the UFC. When Brock Lesnar was in it, he was the most famous. He was the one I was interested in. He's the only one I followed. When CM Punk fights in UFC, the answer is yes. I'm going to be very interested, and I'll probably be finding somewhere that has that pay-per-view, or I'll be buying it myself because I want to see what happens. I want to see if he's going to fight the Green Power Ranger. I want to see what's going to happen when he steps in the octagon. I have no idea, but whatever it is, kudos to UFC because they've got a new guy who will be interested once CM Punk's name is on the card.
A lot of people are saying that CM Punk's first initial fight in UFC is going to be against somebody with a 0-0 record. I don't think they should do that. I think that Punk should actually get in there with somebody who's had matches, or I believe they call them matches, right? I guess I feel like an idiot,
fights,
you know? A fight,
fights,
yeah, that has fights under their belt for a couple of reasons. One, you want Punk to – I don't want to see him get his ass kicked. I actually want to see a good fight, but I think that you have to have some credibility. You have to give credibility to Punk, and by putting him in there with somebody who has fights under their belt, maybe with a winning record, now you got a double draw to this one match, or this one fight, for UFC, and I think it's going to be double the money. I guess if I'm buying it for Punk because I'm a wrestling fan. But if you're a fight fan, you don't really give two shits about CM Punk being in UFC. You give a shit about the other person, right? Like, so you want something there with him?
That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. I think the pencil needs to discuss as this goes further, because as much as WWE and CM Punk are separate, I think they will always be one and the same. And when you hear one, you're going to think of the other. And fans like me and fans like you are going to associate him with WWE more often than not, regardless of what happens from this point forward. It'd be really interesting if anybody that's listening, anybody's got fighting background, UFC background, somebody that's a huge UFC fan, I'd love to hear your opinion on Twitter, on our website. Are UFC fans excited about this? Are UFC guys who are all-time fighters and aren't interested in WWE, are they happy at CM Punk's there? I don't know what their opinion would be.
I think it's twofold. I think, one, if you're a UFC fighter right now on the roster, you are happy for the fact that he's going to bring new eyes to the product, which also equates to more money in their pocket. Similar to golf, right? When Tiger Woods is healthy and he's on tour and he's competing, all the other golfers around Tiger Woods, they do what? They make more money. So they love Tiger Woods on tour. So I think the guys in UFC are excited for the fact that he's there because he's going to bring in all these additional buys. Their payouts are going to be higher. But I also feel that there are that certain crew in UFC that will always assimilate wrestling with fakeness, or it's phony, right? So they're bringing in this fake pro wrestler. And one guy who's in Bellator, I believe, tweeted out, so you're going to sign the fake phony wrestler, but you won't sign the best welterweight Olympic wrestler in the world. And, so I think there are a lot of guys who are bitter, but you can't put a price. I mean, you can put a price, I guess, but Punk's famous, right? I think Dana White is an absolute genius, a marketing genius for signing him. Punk obviously has been in the UFC for a long time. He's been at these shows. He mentioned on Cabana's podcast that he wanted to put sponsors and shit on his shorts like Lesnar. But I think that
he's going to get the chance now.
He's going to get the chance now. It's a multi-deal fight. He wants to fight maybe till he's 40. That would give us 4 years. I don't think he fights until he's 40, but I also now believe 100% that CM Punk, because of this move, will be back in WWE in some way, some shape, or some form someday. because UFC will give Punk the chance to rejuvenate his engine. He's going to understand after a while that he doesn't like getting hit for real. He doesn't like getting his shit kicked out of him, that he wants to go back to pro wrestling, a showmanship sport where he can still make just as good money, if not more than UFC, be at WrestleManias or be on a part-time schedule, which he's bitched about for the longest time. And I ultimately think that it will bring these two back together because you can see Vince made the apology right on the podcast. WWE.com sent out a message saying, we wish Phillip Brooks the best of luck in his new UFC endeavor. Like, they wouldn't do that 6 months ago. They want to patch this relationship because there's money to be made there. And I know this is funny. Punk was basically bitching, right, about the fact that Ryback stiffed him in the ring or was extra rough with him in the ring. He's going to UFC now, where it's 100%, or at least we're led to believe it's 100% stiff, 100% real.
It'll be interesting. It'll be very, very interesting. There's no doubt about that.
Do you think they fixed his first fight? That's another big topic. Do you think, honestly, God, do you think they fixed CM Punk's first fight? Because Justin LeBar, who's going to be our guest next week on the podcast from WrestleZone.com, also writes for the Pittsburgh Tribune, used to write for your website, the Bleacher Report, which you love so much, came out today thinking and saying that the first two fights that CM Punk fights for UFC needs to be fixed if you're smart, if you're Dana White, to keep bringing eyes to the product. Because if Punk is killed in his first fight, if he's absolutely murdered in his first fight, knocked out in 15 seconds, I don't know how many people are going to tune back in to watch him fight again.
No way. I won't believe it. I will not believe that they're going to fix UFC fights. And how they're going to find somebody that's going to sign up for the payday to get their ass kicked when people think that it's real, and then that person's not going to say anything about it after the match when he gets made fun of for getting beat up by the WWE guy. I just don't see this. I don't see any UFC fighter signing up to be that guy to get taken out.
What if they get a guy who's 0-0 or a guy who doesn't have a great record? I mean, they're not going to go out and get, a Floyd Mayweather type character in UFC to fight him in his first match. So they could get somebody who's relatively unknown or unknown household name in UFC, and they could pay him enough money to do the job to Punk. And I firmly believe that they actually might do that. We'll
see. Either way, we're going to get to watch it, and we'll talk about it afterwards on this show. But enough about UFC, enough about Punk. Let's get to Monday Night Raw from last night, the Slammy Awards episode. What's your take from it?
Terrible timing of the Slammies, and I tweeted this out. I love the Slammy Awards. I do. I think it's a great concept. I think it's cool for professional wrestling, but I also think it's a concept that could be an exclusive to the WWE Network. And I think that's what it should have been, because the Slammies took away so much from Raw, in my opinion, when this Raw should have been focused 110% on TLC and selling network buys for the TLC pay-per-view on Sunday. It was too much gimmick, not enough build. We have 8 matches on Sunday, and I was there with you a week ago, and we watched Raw, and we loved it. We absolutely loved it. And this week, as much as I like the Slammies, I think the Slammies should be an exclusive pre or post show, whatever it might be, or do it on a different night. I mean, it's cool, right? It's cool as a wrestling fan to see this, and whether or not the awards are legit or not. I mean, with Roman Reigns winning Superstar of the Year, that just utterly shocked the hell out of me, because I think that was fixed. But I think everything else might have been legit shoot. I was very disappointed. As a go-home show, if they're going to do this, they should have flipped the Raws. They should have had last week's Raw, the quality of last week's Raw this week, and then the quality of this week's Raw last week, in my opinion.
I agree. I don't like the Slammies all that much. They don't do anything for me as a wrestling fan. When I see that it's the Slammies and I know that Brock Lesnar's not going to be there, Sting's winning awards and he's not going to be there to accept them because of storylines elsewhere. It's just too much. It's too much storyline / who's winning the awards, why they're winning the award. It's too much stuff for me to accept as the fact that it's not all fixed. And I know that the matches are predetermined. I know what I'm watching, but don't give me an award show on something that I know is all of the storyline. I don't know that I believe any of the awards are legit, so don't waste an hour of my time whenever all I really want to see is what's going to happen coming up to TLC, start leading me up to the Royal Rumble. I don't need to see half the stuff that we saw in the award show last night. I didn't think it was very entertaining, and obviously it took away from the entire Raw that all in all wasn't terrible, but including with the Slammies, I can't give it much better than an average grade.
All of Slammy's given out. I thought the only one, and I think I'm just thinking of all the Slammys that I remember from last night. The only one that I thought was fixed was the Superstar of the Year one. I think everything else, to me, I thought was legit. I thought that it came from the WWE app.
Absolutely unacceptable for Seth Rollins versus Dean Ambrose at Hell in a Cell or at Raw the following night to not even be nominated for Match of the Year, because I thought both of them were top 3 matches of the year and better than almost everyone that was nominated. So I don't know how they come up with the nominations. Based on what was nominated, sure, maybe it wasn't, but I think they nominate the things that they want people to vote for as opposed to what legitimately was when I watched it with my eyes.
Oh,
Dean
absolutely.
Ambrose and Rollins was the best match of the year, I thought. And not to mention the other match that you and I saw live at Elimination Chamber, Shield versus Wyatt family. That match doesn't get nominated for Match of the Year. So I don't see how they expect somebody that watches it year round to accept that award show as legit.
Yeah, I agree. I think that match was awesome. I also, at WrestleMania, I thought Daniel Bryan and Triple H was actually better than the main event, and the main event got on there. But my favorite match of the year was a match that happened on Monday Night Raw. It was Antonio Cesaro versus John Cena. I believe that, I think that was my favorite match all year. It was great to me. But I think they did utilize the Slammies in one positive, and specifically surrounding Seth Rollins. So he interrupted he accepted the award for Sting, and on the pre-show, he accepted the award for Randy Orton, who's a name that's out there that we know is going to be back probably on Sunday or Monday. So they are, and they also, I guess, this is a different portion. We'll get to that in a second. But I mean, they wrapped the Slammies in the storylines leading into Sunday the best that they could, whether it be AJ winning Diva of the Year, the Tag Team of the Year saying that they're going to beat up Miz and Mizdow. I mean, they did a good job there. It just, to me, it took too much time up from actual in-ring product that could have built the storylines better for TLC. I guess, how are you feeling about TLC at this point? I mean, the pay-per-view itself, are you excited for it?
I looked at the card today, Ryan, and I'm excited about it. I think it's a really
card.
good. I think it's a really, really good card, and I think and we had a guest on a few weeks ago, and he said that this pay-per-view is going to be a throwaway pay-per-view like it normally is, because they're not going to build to something right before the Rumble because they can't give up everything before the Rumble. And if this is considered a throwaway pay-per-view as opposed to what we're going to get coming in the new year with the Rumble, with whatever's happening in February now leading up
Fastlane.
to WrestleMania.
WWE Fastlane is the new pay-per-view. Yes.
So if this card is considered to be something that's so quote-unquote a throwaway compared to what we're going to get, that makes me even more excited about whatever they've got planned for going into the Rumble and later, because there's 4 or 5 matches on the card that I'm legitimately interested in seeing what happens, and the main event being one of them for sure, with Rollins and Cena and possibly a new number 1 contender coming out of it, and Orton looming over the entire match. I think it's a pay-per-view that I'm way more excited for today than I thought I'd be 2 or 3 weeks ago.
I agree. It's going to be awesome. And obviously, before we wrap up our portion of this podcast, we're going to get into the Renny versus Dirty predictions, which I am awful at, but I will try my best. I have 8 matches.
Is it 3-1 me right now?
Yeah, man. It's fucking 3-1 you. So, and after Sunday, it's probably going to be 4-1 the way I've been picking. So maybe in my head, I just need to reverse everything that I want to go with and go the other route, and I'm probably going to beat you. But before we get into that, there are still a couple things from Raw that I thought were great standouts. One is I want you to talk about the Paul Heyman Seth Rollins segment.
Thank God they're talking about it. How many months are they going to go where they didn't bring it up? Now, I thought Heyman was great. I thought Rollins was the shining point of last night's episode. I thought he was good in every segment he was in.
Which is a lot.
Yeah, which was a lot. But hey, there was a Raw 2 months ago that we got like 5 segments of Jack Swagger, so I'll take 5 segments of Rollins over some things. But putting him in that situation with Heyman going back and forth, I think is fantastic. Rollins is so much better on the mic and talking in front of the camera than I thought he would be 3 or 4 months ago whenever he broke up from the Shield. So I'm impressed with what he's doing. And I think Heyman, he's doing what Heyman does. And I can't wait. All he's doing is I cannot wait for Rollins to sell the F5 for the first time, because when Lesnar gets his hands on him, it's going to be fucking awesome. And they're being able to make a money match without one of the main characters being on Raw every week. And that's exactly what you and I said should happen and needed to happen whenever Lesnar wasn't going to be around. And he hasn't been around for months, and I still can't wait for him to get his hands on Seth Rollins. And that's saying something, because really we were under the impression that Cena and Orton were the only ones that we'd be interested in seeing against Lesnar. Seth Rollins has taken a step in there. I want to see him in the ring with Lesnar, and I want to see what he can do against the Beast.
He's going to get fucking killed. I mean, in the real life fight, he's getting killed, but this is pro wrestling. We have to suspend your, the illusion of belief, and it's cool. I'm glad they're touching base on it. It's about time. It's 2 weeks in a row. We're both ecstatic about it. Great promo. Seth Rollins has got to be fucking just pleased that he's on Raw like every 30 seconds. You know, his stock is rising. They have everything tied to him. He should have won the Breakout Star of the Year, I guess, in my eyes, but Dean Ambrose is a close second. By the way, do you think Dean Ambrose and RVD were smoking pot in the back of that ambulance when you opened the door up, the smoke that came? I don't understand. I mean, I don't think there's any question that they were doing that yet. I think it's just WWE. There's no reason for smoke to come out of the back of an ambulance. I get it, like, come on. I mean, there's certain things you just don't do.
Don't tell me that was a legitimate neck brace, because he ripped that bitch off way too easy.
Well, he took it off. He wasn't strong enough to fucking rip it off. He had to pull it over the top of his head like a t-shirt. So, whatever. I mean, get to the gym, Dean, for fuck's sake. Get to the gym. One man who's been getting to the gym is my boy Eric Rowan, though. And last night, I don't understand what the WWE did or why they did what they did. And I have this down that I wanted to talk about. Eric Rowan and Luke Harper, former members of the Wyatt family, a faction, a stable, a great faction, split up too soon, or they went their separate ways too soon. We don't necessarily know why they went their separate ways. There's no backstory to why they went their separate ways, and there was no backstory to why these two want to brutally beat the shit out of each other in a wrestling ring. Wasted opportunity by WWE. I believe this could have been a money-making match in a pay-per-view if there would have been some intrigue. Now, maybe Rowan got thrown into that Survivor Series main event, by accident. We talked about that here. You thought it was kind of a night of decision or even mid-show decision to throw him in. But can you tell me one legitimate reason why you think that those two should want to beat the hell out of each other and rip each other's heads off last night on Raw?
No.
Yeah, there's nothing.
I can't. I couldn't believe. I mean, the story is so easy to tell. All they needed to do is just tell the story. They were in a group. Now they're not. Tell us why they're not. Then have them wrestle. Instead, they just announced it during a fucking commercial break, and then they just came back and wrestled, and nobody knows why. It was a waste.
Here's the thing: they could have built that for Rumble. They could ideally, I would have probably built it for WrestleMania, because people still remember the Wyatt family, and then you could have Bray involved in that angle, trying to patch things up between the family, right? But Bray's too worried about his Cracker Barrel rocking chair, which I still think is awesome, by the way, that they destroyed it, even though some people think it's stupid. It is what it is. It was a wasted opportunity, I think, from WWE, but they waste a lot of opportunities to make money, but they also make a lot of money, so whatever. Who the fuck am I going to tell them what to do? One thing last night on Raw, which I was happy about, was seeing Charlotte. I thought that was great, and I know Josh Zabrowski, if you're listening, you're going to be appreciative of this. Charlotte, to me, is the best female wrestler in the entire company, and she's in NXT. She's the daughter of Ric Flair. She's good-looking. She's tall. She has skills in the ring. The match last night, they were only given probably 4.5 minutes, 5 minutes. It was good, though, for what it was. What do you like that when they bring up the NXT roster? I mean, I don't know how much you watch NXT.
I watch NXT enough to know who the characters are, and I think that it would be very, very nice if they did that every single week. Bring one tag team up for a match against somebody on the main roster. Bring one individual up like Charlotte last night for a match against the main roster. I know there were people very upset that she got 3 minutes and lost to Natalya in her first match on Raw. I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't need to have I don't need every person that comes up to be fucking Rusev and go undefeated for 6 months. That's not realistic, and that's not what I want to see. I'm okay with her losing. That's the beauty of, I don't want somebody to come up and start on top. As much as it worked for Paige, I mean, where is she now? Right. It makes more sense to do it the way that they did it last night, regardless of, and I thought Charlotte looked good in defeat, and that's part of being good on the main roster. Ask any of them how many guys have lost matches and are still on the main roster. You don't have to win every match on TV to be popular.
I agree. There was a lot of griping on Twitter or whatever social media platform people are using where I can't believe they'd have Charlotte come up, who was the NXT champion, women's champion, and lose to Natalya. Well, Natalya's on the main roster, so she's in the big leagues, okay? So you think about this in any sport.
What kind of argument is that? How dare they have an NXT person come up and lose to a WWE superstar? Listen to yourself. Why the fuck would somebody in NXT come up and just wipe the floor? That would make much less sense, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the D-League champions are going to come up and outscore LeBron. It's not going to happen, you know? So it's just, come on, guys. Think about it here. Just because she's new and because she's good, you definitely still have to make her pay her dues. She's got to climb her way to the top, and she will be on top. By WrestleMania, you can guarantee she will be on the main roster, if not in the picture for the women's title. The girls on NXT are wrestling chicks. I mean, some look good, like Sasha Banks looks decent, but she can work. They all can work, which is a good thing about that system is they're not bringing in models and divas or models and, I guess whoever else they bring in, swimsuit models and TV personalities. I mean, they're teaching these girls how to wrestle, and Charlotte, obviously, with Natalya, who we all know can work really well. I thought it was good that they actually took a female match on this one because in the past we saw that three-way with Tyson Kidd. I believe it was Sami Zayn, and
Adrian Neville and Tyler Breeze.
Tyler Breeze, yeah, that was awesome. Okay, we all loved that, and that was pushing their NXT takeover too. I don't think they did a good enough job of explaining that NXT has a special event on Thursday. And normally, we gripe too much about them pushing the network. I don't think they pushed the network enough for the NXT pay-per-view, quote-unquote pay-per-view on Thursday because those shows are so fucking awesome. They're really, really good. It's a two-hour pay-per-view special on the network. The matches are fantastic. We got Sami Zayn and Adrian Neville main eventing. I would assume that Adrian Neville's going to lose his title and come up to the main roster, and Sami Zayn will be down there for a little bit longer, but they're so much fun to watch, man. They got some cool characters down there that are in development that, you got the Accession coming up soon, so I love seeing it, and if they're not going to do it all the time, okay, that's fine. Make sure you do it before an NXT special comes on, but we got 3 hours of Raw, and we said it before. If nothing else, bring up one of these NXT guys to work with a Luke Harper or a Dolph Ziggler, just to give them some in-ring time with an established name. Now, back in the day, they had enhancement guys or jobbers that came in and did the job that were from local territories. Well, use somebody, and I'm not trying to take something away from the local guys because I love that opportunity. But you got the system in Orlando. You can use that too and build an NXT guy while losing to a WWE guy. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, and there's enough time whenever some of the U.S. belt or somebody like that's got a U.S. belt, Intercontinental belt, where they're not in a legitimate feud, like, say, Rusev a couple weeks ago, which I know now he's against Swagger, but when those guys come out to the ring, I see nothing wrong with them taking a week where they can just come out and badmouth the locker room and have that heel champion say, I'm tired of hearing about NXT. I'm tired of hearing about the locker room. Nobody can beat me. Anybody that thinks they can come out here. And then have Sami Zayn's music hit and have him come out and get beat. That's still something. I mean, I think that's a much better use of pushing NXT and of pushing younger talent than just bringing it up during a commercial break or trying to hope that people see it on the network.
And I really wish they wouldn't have used that NXT, I guess, takeover gimmick like 4 or 5 years ago in WWE, whatever it was, when they came in, they tore down the ring and, Daniel Bryan was choking Justin Roberts with the tie and he got fired. I wish they would have reserved that for now when they actually have an established product on the network where people know about it, because now that would be hot. That would be great to have a group of those guys come in and just challenge the WWE locker room. It'd be fantastic. And Tyler Breeze needs to get a call up. The fucking kid's awesome. It's a great gimmick.
He's got a great gimmick.
It's so awesome. And we've been asked on this show here, people want us to kind of educate you on pro wrestling. One of our friends said, well, how come I didn't know what gorilla position was prior to last week? All right, so I wrote something down this week. The term gigging. It means for those of you listening, and everybody can Google this. It's not like I'm giving away secrets of professional wrestling. So if you're in the business and you're mad at me for giving this away, fuck off, because you can Google all this shit and it's already been out there. And Stone Cold talks about it daily on his podcast. Basically, the term gigging is, and this is something that WrestleMania 14 with Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret Hart, Stone Cold's probably got the best gig job of all time, is when you cut yourself, use a blade, whatever it is, to get color, and color is our term for blood. Dirt, I want to ask you, we don't see blood very often in pro wrestling, obviously with it being a PG or G content rated program, whatever it might be according to whoever watches it. Do you think incorporating gigging back into the product would be beneficial to professional wrestling or beneficial to the WWE?
God, I got distracted because you brought up one of my favorite matches of all time, possibly my favorite match of all time. That double turn was just fucking gorgeous. World class. Bret Hart, Stone Cold, whenever you want to come on the pencil and talk about it, bring it on. But digging, yeah, I mean, I think it's cool. I think I can remember the times whenever Brock Lesnar got busted open by Triple H last year. I can remember when Extreme Rules, John Cena got busted open by Lesnar. There's a pretty common denominator there that Lesnar's a fucking badass. But yeah, I think it's cool. I have no problem with it, and it's memorable, and especially at the gimmicks pay-per-views or during matches that make sense for people to bleed. I don't see why you can't have some blood and people can handle it. I think give people more credit than you might think they deserve, WWE. We don't think people are dying. Everybody's going to be okay if we see a little bit of blood. It doesn't have to be a pool, but somebody's going to get cut on their head when they're getting hit with kendo sticks and chairs and stairs. It's pretty reasonable to believe.
Yeah, and there's a saying in pro wrestling, red is green, brother. You bleed, you make more money. And the double turn, it was awesome, but I don't think it would have been as effective if Austin wasn't, spewing out blood like a pig, And the time that, Lesnar knocked his head in the post, that was cool. Orton got knocked by the ladder, at Money in the Bank or whatever it was, and was busted wide open. And people are like, oh, we haven't seen this in a long time. So I agree. I think when you're going to give away a Slammy Award for the most extreme moment of the year, and it's pretty lame, the extreme moments to me, if you're talking extreme and we're going to have an ECW superstar give away the Slammy, for Christ's sakes, live up to the term or just don't do it. And
yeah, RVD's got to just be rolling over whenever he's got to give that away to something that was so weak.
Yeah, he kind of looked big too. He looked bigger last night.
He did. I like the way he looked.
So I don't know what's going on there. Maybe everybody loves a comeback, but and speaking, great segue. Everybody loves a comeback. I need to have a comeback. I'm down 3-1 to you, Dirt. WWE TLC and S right now because it's tables, ladders, and chairs and stairs, apparently, whatever, is this Sunday live on the WWE Network at 7 o'clock. Obviously, $9.99 if you don't have it. If you're cool like us, you already have it. So let's do this, man. We're gonna include the pre-show in as well. So we have 9 matches to pick from. 9 matches. Now, if I lose, that's one thing. But if I fucking lose because you get 8 matches right and I get 2, then I'm going to have to start 2015 really reevaluating my life.
Clean slate after this one, but I'd love to win 2014 4-1.
The pre-show, your favorite new faction, the New Day, versus the Dust Brothers. Now, I feel like this is a tough one to pick because we don't know which 2 of the 3 of the New Day are going to be in this match. So I think we're at a disadvantage picking this. So, ideally,
go ahead. You start us off.
Ideally, I don't think the New Day needs the victory. I think that this is something between the 2 of them that can keep going. But at the end of the day, because they're a brand new faction, because this is the first pay-per-view that they're on, I have the New Day going over on the Dust Brothers, but it will not be the last match between these 2 teams.
I've got the New Day winning as well. I'll say that it'll be Big E and Kofi Kingston. I'll go on the limb and say I'll say that it'll be those 2, but regardless of what combination it is, I'll take the New Day.
I think you're right. I would go with those 2 as well. Like you said, Xavier Woods is kind of the stick piece. After 2.5 weeks, are you still kind of buying into the New Day a little bit? Or I'm not buying into Kofi being Kofi. I don't like that.
No, I wish their characters would have changed more, but yeah, I'm good with it so far. We'll see where it goes. I'm not sold. I'm not completely sold out on it, so I'm open to seeing where it goes.
Awesome. All right, man. The next match is Eric Rowan and The Big Show. Now, this is not in any particular order, obviously, so we don't know the card lineup straight down. But Eric Rowan versus The Big Show in the stairs match.
Eric Rowan's my pick. I don't remember the last thing that The Big Show won, a match that he won clean. Not that this will be a clean finish, but that's almost more of a throw out of The Big Show not believing that he'll win on a pay-per-view than it is pro Eric Rowan, but either way, I'll take Rowan to win.
Damn it. I'm going to go with The Big Show. I'm just trying to think of the card here with heels and faces, and this is probably not the best pick of mine, but I need to be different of you, and the only way I can win this damn thing is to pick different from you. So I will take The Big Show over Eric Rowan. It's a stairs match, so I guess, it gives a chance for Eric Rowan to go over using stairs, but whatever. Your favorite big guy, Ryback versus Kane, the chairs match. This one I got Ryback going over on Kane.
I also have Ryback going over on Kane, and I hope that CM Punk watches.
Do you think he alludes to CM Punk anyway during that match?
I mean, I hope so. I mean, it's funny where they're at right now, because when Punk left, he left because he was supposed to leave Royal Rumble and have a feud with Kane before WrestleMania, and he complained about Ryback, and now these two are going against each other, and Punk's getting ready to fucking fight somebody for real in UFC. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought, right? Who would have thought? Brings us to your favorite tag team, The Miz and Mizdow versus the Usos. I guess this is your pick first this time.
My pick first, I am taking Jimmy and Jey Uso to take the belts back. I think this is where it starts with Mizdow and The Miz breaking up and having him be a little jealous of all the credit and attention that Mizdow gets. So I'll say The Miz goes out on his back and they get a rematch at some point, but leading into Royal Rumble, that will be when everything finalizes with Mizdow breaking away from The Miz. But I'll take the Usos Sunday night. I'll
take the team of Miz and Mizdow. I think that their definite downfall has started, but I think Mizdow is going to eliminate The Miz at the Royal Rumble while they're still tag team champions, and then it's going to lead to the downfall from there. At least that's how I book it. But if I'm booking the show, apparently nobody's watching. Whatever. Nikki Bella, AJ Lee, Divas title match. I think this one's kind of one of the easiest ones of the card. I got Nikki Bella going over to retain the title.
So do I.
All right, so that was pretty easy. Rusev Jack Swagger for the U.S. title. I also think that maybe this is actually the easiest one on the card to pick. You can go and pick first.
We're both taking Rusev.
All right, so Rusev on that one. Pretty simple for those of you guys following along. If you pick anybody but Rusev, you haven't been watching the product. Luke Harper, Dolph Ziggler, Intercontinental Championship in a ladder match. This is actually a difficult one for me to pick. Because Dolph just coming off of this extremely high, successful Survivor Series. I'm going to have Dolph Ziggler winning the strap to take it back.
I agree. I'm taking Dolph Ziggler. It's a ladder match. He's going to look fantastic. He's going to make Luke Harper look fantastic. And him standing on top of that ladder with the title is the only outcome I can imagine. So I'll say he takes it back, leading to probably at least one more rematch with these guys, because I think Luke Harper is in a great spot having a feud with a guy who's going to make him look as good as Ziggler will.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when you talk about Dolph Ziggler, they say he looks like a young Shawn Michaels or resembles a young Shawn Michaels in the ring. How did Shawn Michaels become famous? He won a ladder match against
Razor Ramon, baby,
for the IC title. So this one you get to pick first because this is great. TLC match, Bray Wyatt, the Eater of Worlds versus the Lunatic Fringe, Dean Ambrose.
I'll take Ambrose to go over in the only match that will be including all three gimmicks, tables, ladders, and chairs. Dean Ambrose, the Lunatic Fringe, over Bray Wyatt.
Boy, I'm telling you, this is a tough one for me because I think Bray really hasn't been anything as of late. He hasn't really gotten a push. He's working this angle with this. There was a disqualification last month, and he got covered in chairs. I got Bray Wyatt going over Dean Ambrose in the TLC match on Sunday. That's what I will take. And then our main event, John Cena loses. He loses his title shot versus Seth Rollins in just a tables match. John Cena is going to win this match, and he will go on to face Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship.
Yes, he will. I agree. I think it's a very safe bet that both guys, they don't want to make either one of these guys look bad going into the Royal Rumble. So here's a spoiler alert for everyone. That's the reason that they have this pay-per-view before the Royal Rumble starts, because these gimmick matches are highly easy to make everyone look good and not make anybody look stupid and lose cleanly. So Seth Rollins can go into the Royal Rumble season without a clean loss. It'll just be a loss in a tables match. Who hasn't lost one of those? That's at the top of the card. John Cena goes over and hopefully gets his ass worked by Lesnar again.
We get the return of Brock Lesnar on Monday, so we're going to have a big podcast next Tuesday as we welcome in Justin LeBar from WrestleZone.com. The following Tuesday, we welcome in referee Rob Page from Minnesota independent wrestling scene. After that, we bring back Lance Archer from New Japan Pro Wrestling as they welcome in their January 4th Wrestle Kingdom 9 show from the Tokyo Dome in Tokyo for the first time ever available on pay-per-view from Global Force Wrestling here in the States. And then January 6th, we bring in Mr. Kamikaze Ken Anderson from Total Nonstop Action, which I believe is going to be just renamed Impact Wrestling only. We got some really good episodes coming up for everybody out there in the listening world. Just want to say real quick, too, thank you for everybody who's been listening to the show. It's been more successful than I guess I imagined in the first place, to have you guys want to listen to Dirt and I spew our bullshit for half hour, 40 minutes, and bring somebody on. It's kind of cool. We try to act like we know what we're talking about, or at least talk the best game that we possibly can, but we fuck up from time to time. So let us know when we do on Twitter at Pencil Podcast. He's at Travis Mester. I'm at Real Renny D. We're online at pencilpodcast.com. Also on Facebook under The Pencil. You can do us a huge favor, as I mentioned early in the show. Subscribe to us on iTunes or however you may get your podcasts. Rate and review them. Give us a 5-star if you think we're a 5-star. And if you think we suck, tell us we suck. We'll try to do things to make it better. But really go ahead and tell somebody about this podcast, a friend, family member, somebody involved in pro wrestling. We're going to do the best that we can do to keep bringing back guests on a regular basis. And stick around, because we bring in Dysfunction from the Wisconsin independent wrestling scene, also known as the Weedman on Juggalo Championship Wrestling. Was a Rosebud a couple times on WWE TV. Great conversation we just had with him earlier today. Dirt, that wraps up episode 19. We got Sunday, we got Monday, and there's going to be a bottle of E&J or J. Bavay and a bottle of Southern Comfort coming one person's way real quick.
I'm going to have to drink my one from the last couple of months, so I don't have too many stacked up.
Too many stacked up, and just a little spoiler alert for people out there in internet listening world. Dirt and I won't have to be doing this podcast from 2 different cities much any longer, so we'll let that one marinate in a little bit longer. Until then, episode 20, our big 20th episode next week with Justin LeBar from WrestleZone.com. Dirt, you stay classy, my friend, and I hope that you fucking suck on Sunday.
Hey everybody, you're listening to The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast hosted by me, Renny D, and my friends. Each and every Tuesday we come at you with a new episode on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube, where we discuss the previous week's product on television, as well as the ins and outs of professional wrestling news and rumors. We'll also bring you exciting guests to bring you their perspective on professional wrestling. Follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast. The Pencil's kicking off the new year with their biggest podcast yet. On January 6th, we will officially kick off Destination Impact. We are available on iTunes, YouTube, PodBean, and Stitcher. Find us online at pencilpodcast.com or follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast as we welcome former TNA World Heavyweight Champion,
Mester Anderson!
You've been listening to another great episode of The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast coming straight at you every Tuesday on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube. But hang around, we got a lot more to come, because up next is the guest of the evening. We dive right into the world of professional wrestling, asking all the questions that you want answers to. Up next.
First wrestling memory as a kid?
Yeah, I have this picture of myself from when I was 1 year old, and I was being like a terror at the photo shop, and my dad brought my Hulk Hogan LJN figure. So like my first pictures have me holding a rubber Hulk Hogan action figure. So that's one I can reference. But I just remember watching wrestling from being a little kid. My dad and pretty much our whole family kind of watched it, so it was just kind of something that we watched. I thought everybody watched it, honestly. I used to wonder why it wasn't covered on SportsCenter and things like that. Like, I thought it was a big deal.
Yeah, I was actually the same exact way. I thought, obviously, at a young age, you grow up thinking wrestling is, the outcomes aren't, whatever it is. But I was totally with you as far as it not being on ESPN. They show boxing. Now they show MMA. Yeah. When did you, I guess, then, you watched pro wrestling, you watched Hulk Hogan. At what age did you know that this is exactly what you wanted to do?
I would say probably like around 12 or 13 maybe, around there. That's what I decided. The real kickstart for me, I guess, was watching ECW and being like super interested in how awesome those matches were coming across and for some reason it just made me feel like, man, I feel like I can fucking do that. And it just kind of snowballed from there, honestly.
So when you first started watching ECW, at that time it wasn't on TNN or Spike TV. Now, were you tape trading? Were you, I guess, getting it on online internet at that point, or how were you watching the product?
My uncle actually had like one of those gigantic satellite dishes that was really ridiculous back in that time period, so he could get the Sunshine Network. So I would go and sleep over by his house on I think it was Saturday nights or something like that sometimes, just so I could catch some ECW. And I remember the first time I saw Just Incredible, and he busted out That's Incredible, and I was like, man, this guy's fucking cool. You know, it was just something different compared to the WWF and what they were doing. A little bit back, when I was a little kid, I used to think that, like, Brutus the Barber Beefcake was actually his name. And I used to wonder, I was like, well, how did his mom know he was going to be fucking Barber, or, you know, like the Big Boss Man? Like, how did he get his name? How did they know?
That is fantastic. ECW, I think, transformed wrestling for a lot of us, myself included. So you're watching ECW at 12, 13 years old. When did you actually then, you know, become, or when did you actually start your pro wrestling career? How old were you at this point?
I started backyard wrestling with my cousins. When I started that when I was probably like 13 and a half.
Okay.
And I did that up until I was about 16 and a half. And then I started training with Mid-American Wrestling. So, I mean, actively I've been wrestling since I've been 14 pretty much, and I haven't stopped since.
When you were doing the yard and gimmick, were you actually in the yard on a trampoline? Did you guys actually build a ring?
We built our own little makeshift ring with no ropes, but it didn't matter because they were invisible, and if you threw somebody off, they would come back to you like there was ropes there.
Right.
We didn't do backyard wrestling for a crowd or anything. We did as cousins, family, and friends who liked wrestling, so we were putting out our own product kind of thing, and we were watching it back ourselves later and popping for it and stuff. So it wasn't like we were trying to gain any type of exposure or get our shit out there, but we just did it for ourselves because we had a great time doing it.
Yeah, when you're doing backyard stuff, is it mainly you and how many guys? Is it mostly cousins or buddies from around the area, or how many guys were doing it, and what age ranges? Cousins and friends of the family, but the bonus for us is we went to Mexico, right around the time we started doing this, so we were able to buy 10 different masks. So everybody had a bunch of characters, and then we could flip the masks inside out and have another character. And we were we'd always hit up Goodwills and buy different shitty clothes. And, we had probably, a 40-guy roster with, 8 guys. So many characters. Perfect. You had a ton of Sin. You had about 25 Sin Caras running around in the backyard.
Yeah, I mean, we had, everybody had 4 or 5 characters. So it was cool.
Dude, we were the same exact way, but we didn't actually wear masks. So I would play Steve Blackman and Kurt Angle. We would do rip-off or the WWE. But, we had an 8mm camera with me and 6 of my buddies just taping it, thinking we were the coolest fucking people on the planet. And we had so much fun watching it back. Do you remember the name of what was your backyard wrestling? What was your backyard wrestling name, your favorite character to play? And what was the name of the quote-unquote fed that you guys ran?
The fed we had was Extreme Hardcore Wrestling, which was a takeoff on ECW type things.
Sure.
When we first started it, we were just like you guys with the name changes slightly. My cousin Bobby, he was wrestling as Babu, and I was wrestling as the franchise, and my cousin was wrestling as Tim Snow. So when we first started, that was our silliness. And then as we, kept doing it more and more, Bob got his own original name. Tim ended up keeping his name, and then the few times he wrestled on the indies, he did wrestle as Tim Snow. And then I picked my wrestling name when I was a sophomore in high school. So I've been wrestling as Dysfunction for quite some time,
Right. So when were you exposed to Mid-American Wrestling in Carmine? Was that your first independent wrestling promotion that you were exposed to outside of I guess ECW at that time is quote-unquote still kind of independent, but was this your first indie show that you were exposed to?
No, when I was really young, my dad took me to a car dealership that had a Dr. X match. I mean, there was no other matches on this card, but it was I don't even know if it was him, but it was, a Dr. X type character wrestling some dude. So I would say that was my first time ever, and I was probably 7 or 8. But when I was maybe a little older than that, Dave Hero was running shows around that time. So, we went and seen Honky Tonk Man at this venue, Texas Victory Hall in Milwaukee, and I was probably 10. So I dug indie wrestling. They used to have posters up. I used to see them in my house, too, for Mid-American Wrestling, and I never went until I got a little bit older and could go on myself. So, I mean, I've seen the stuff, but it took a while to ease into going to indie wrestling.
So you trained at Mid-American Wrestling with Carmine. Who was actually the head trainer, or who did you, I guess, spend most of your time in the ring with, learning the ins and outs of the business?
I learned from a lot of people. You know, I learned from Carmine, I learned from Frank, I learned from Skull Crusher. When I was very early on in my career, I got to go down by Ian Rotten in IWA Mid-South, and that was like a super hot place to be.
Right.
You know, that's where everybody wanted to wrestle at that time. You know, that was where people were making names. So, I mean, I got to learn from so many different people, like Chris Hero. He was doing camps down at Ian's, and, you know, I was doing road trips with, not in the same car, but we would do caravans where it was Punk, Cabana, Prazak, and some Chicago guys, and then behind them would be me and Adrian Serrano, you know, the Milwaukee guys. Right. So it was cool, man. There's a lot of people to learn from.
Where did you come up with the name Dysfunction? You said you got it when you were a teenager. How did you come up with it?
I don't know. I was just writing random names for our backyard stuff, and then I just liked the way it sounded. I think I wrote it as like a different, like, unstoppable monster type character, you know, supposed to be somebody who's big, and then I think I'm just going to use this, and then I took it. So here we are today.
So you started training with Carmine's camp at 16 years old, is what you said?
Yeah.
When was your first match?
I had my first match probably 6 or 7 months later. It was November 2001-ish, right around there. My first match was against Frankie DeFalco at a FanCon event, which wasn't like a real show. It was like a show Carmine put on like a Sunday afternoon with like vendors who were selling shit. And it was all right. I mean, it was a good match, but like, you go back and watch it, and like I didn't have boots or anything like that, you know. So there's different parts of it where you're just like, But I think it was all right for a first effort.
Yeah, and those guys that you train with are some hardcore dudes. Like Skull Crusher is one of the nicest guys in the world, but he obviously loves this business so much that it's 100% all in, serious for him. Training under him, I guess, did you smarten up pretty damn quick to the business?
I was never like an asshole. Like, you know, some people kind of come in and are assholes, but like there's one time we were all working out in the ring, and Derek St. Holmes was like, "Are those gig marks on your head?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm a yarder, duh." So like, I kind of made people laugh and stuff, and I was very open with myself. I wasn't like, you know, like thinking I was better than anybody, or, you know, like I should be doing this or anything like that. So, and I feel like I earned everything I got. Like, you know, like training with guys like that, like you can't really suck or they'll beat the shit out of you. You know, that's kind of faded away in wrestling, but around here, I was one of the, like, not one of the last, but I mean, there wasn't very many, like, guys who came after me who got, like, the beat the shit out of them treatment and earn everything you get. Wrestlers are a little bit pussified nowadays to where they don't, you know, it's a little different.
It's a lot different. I obviously, you know, I worked with Jason Dukes, for instance, you know, out of Milwaukee, and he taught me real quick too. It's just one of those learning experiences that you get. And I know that you're definitely an old school mentality guy. Working shows with you in Neo Pro, you still had that mentality of working with the green kids. A little bit harder to really, I guess, make sure they knew exactly what the hell they were getting into. Over the years, have you had the hand in training some of the new age kids coming up in wrestling nowadays?
Yeah, I help a lot of guys because I'm way different than I used to be. I feel like, you know, I kind of bum on myself how I used to be. I was kind of an asshole, and I don't know, I was kind of a jerk to people, and I was just kind of into myself. It's become like more about helping everybody, you know, especially in Wisconsin. Like the AD scene in Wisconsin now compared to 14 years ago is so different. You know, like it's not territorial. People don't really hate each other anymore. You know, there's not guys like Adrian Lynch who are just cunts to anybody who's new and upcoming. You know, like you had a lot of that where those dudes wouldn't put young guys over or teach them anything. And, yeah, fuck these guys, fuck him, you know. And now it's nothing like that at all. It's everybody around here wants to help everybody get better, and it's pretty nice.
And I noticed that, too, breaking in. Obviously, I started out in Wisconsin more than anything else and working shows with you, and Serrano was awesome. And, you know, working with Carmine was great, too. But I did notice then, as you mentioned years ago, there was heat between quote-unquote territories. But the different styles between a Wisconsin worker and a Minnesota worker, in my eyes, were drastically different. And today, it even seems like it's still pretty different between, like, the guys in, quote, Wisconsin and Minnesota. And I remember being on a First Avenue wrestling show, and I knew that you were supposed to be on the show, and so was your cousin Bobby. And I hadn't seen you guys in forever. And I saw Bobby, and it was great, and I was disappointed I didn't get a chance to see you, but I think you hurt your finger or something, or sliced your finger.
Well, I lied. Me and Ken go back and forth about this all the time. Like, I'm a huge Packers fan, and that was the same day as the Packers versus the 49ers.
Yeah.
And sometimes for me, like, hanging out with my family and watching a Packer game trumps wrestling, and that was one of those days. But I still hear about it all the time from Ken. He never lets that shit go.
Oh, he won't. He won't. But can you explain the difference then? Why even today, I feel like if I would go to, I guess, who's David Harrow's show now, and with some of the Wisconsin guys, I feel like the wrestling would be drastically different than what I guess I consider myself a Minnesota guy because I've been there for so long, but drastically different than how we worked in Minnesota.
I don't know, like Minnesota was weird. I don't know if we were on that same show together, but there was like this show this one dude ran in the old Neo Pro Armory where that Buddha guy was there and like Blue Meanie was supposed to be there or something. I don't know, were you on that or no?
I wasn't on that. I've worked shows with that Buddha guy before.
Yeah,
but
do you remember I super kicked him flat in the face and broke his glasses and busted his nose because he was just such a fucking asshole and just a cunt, dude. Me and Caleb could not stand that guy, and he was constantly running his fucking mouth. I don't know, like Minnesota has a weird vibe to it, I think. It has its good spots, but like, you know, back in the day, like it was like the sheriff and that dude and then like Neo Pro, and there wasn't a whole lot. I know Larson still runs his shows up there and then Cannon, but otherwise, besides those two, I don't really know anything that goes on there.
There's some decent ones now that run on a consistent basis, but it's a lot different. I guess back when we would go back and forth, we were used to the Neo Pros, the Steel Domains, and the Mid-Americans, and ACWs, or whatever it is. But even today, you'll still hear people in locker rooms say, you know, in Minnesota anyway, that they feel that they're better than the Wisconsin crew. And I can't really say anything because I haven't really seen a lot of your guys' work outside of YouTube. How much is your work? Is the Wisconsin indie scene, as far as work goes, very similar to the last 10 years, or has it changed drastically with the new guys coming into the business?
Well, it's like this, like WWE really slowed everything down if you look at it by getting rid of like the hardcore division and stuff like that. Like ECW really like made it hard for everybody to like not be lazy or like, but like you had to do so much, you know, like seeing like all those hard. If you go back and watch like WWF 2002, 2003, those fucking guys were killing each other with chair shots. Like Lesnar was killing the Hardys, you know, Undertaker was killing people. Like these dudes were just murdering each other, and it's nothing like that anymore. It's much more protected and it's a lot safer on people, it seems, you know. And it's kind of like that on indies too. I mean, WWE sets the trend and people kind of follow along with it. It's just slowed down, you know. It's not as crazy it used to be for sure.
And you mentioned how that the business is more protected now, I guess, with WWE going to a PG product. Did you notice that too when you went there for your extra gimmick? When you did your tryout match, did Regal tell you like no DDTs, different things like that?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I bet 10 years ago that never even came up. I bet. I mean, they probably encouraged things like that, but that's exactly what he told us too. Is like no DDTs. And I was like, holy shit, this is really, really protected.
Oh yeah, you can't choke anybody now. You can't even go to the top rope in your tryout match. And they, you know, the first time I did it, we got to pick who we worked with, and then this time they were just shoving people in there. You and you go. So to me, that's super nerve-wracking because I'm not the biggest fan of just call it out there and let's just work. I like having a plan and I like having a map on where we're going and what we're doing and having a good idea of it because I just like that style better than the, hey, let's just go out there and call it, brother. You know, I've never been a big fan of that. So. And
on top of that, you're wrestling in front of 15,000 empty chairs, which is really, really weird. It was probably the weirdest thing I've ever done.
That and like the roster that I watch with my kids, so like.
Yeah, where they're standing around the ring watching.
Yeah. Most of the dudes there, not like all like the top guys, but most of the guys they always watch the indie shit, and sometimes they get their laugh, or sometimes they pop for stuff, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the stuff they pop for is the shit that they steal, and then they use it on TV that night or next week, which is cool. How was that Rosebud stuff for you? I mean, you look like you had a good time doing it. I watched you at the SmackDown taping here in Milwaukee. I went to that show. I mean, did you enjoy that experience with doing that?
Yeah.
I mean, that particular angle?
Anytime I can do anything for WWE, I'm super pumped. Years ago, I got to do a lot of stuff. Like, I was Undertaker's Druid one time. I was an SI photographer during the Floyd Mayweather Big Show deal. I was a cop that was protecting Edge and Lita from Kane one time. So I had, like, decent amount of experience. And then with the Rosebud stuff, you know, they gave us decent amount of, like, not TV time, but, like, exposure to where, you know, if you know where that camera is and you know certain things, like, hey, man, you didn't get yourself on TV. Like, he shot us an idea. He's like, oh, we need a couple people to say something. And nobody was chiming in, and I shot an idea. He was like, all right, you say that. So on the app, I have, like, one small speaking line, you know. It's better than nothing. It's better to just, you know, speak like, hey, I got this idea. If you have one and they ask for it, but just opening your mouth and saying something is never the best. But, yeah, I enjoyed it, man. It's cool.
As a wrestling fan, what do you think of the Adam Rose character?
I don't know. I don't know. It's all right, I guess.
I mean, you can say it, man. It's terrible.
I just don't know. Like,
it could be better.
But like, like the bunny thing is stupid as fuck to wrestling fans, but like it intrigues outside wrestling fans for some reason. That there's a giant bunny in there and he's wrestling and his partner is this flamboyant dude and it's all right, but yeah, it's just whatever, man. I'm just happy he got the gimmick because without that gimmick, I wouldn't have had 2 tryout matches. So thanks, Jeff.
Did you not get tryout matches then when you were doing the stuff for The Undertaker and the photography stuff? Or was this your first, I guess, tryout matches once you came in to be, a Rosebud for the first time?
Yeah. My first tryout matches were just this year. I had 2 of them in the last 4 or 5 months. So
That's
all
awesome.
the other times I did it, they weren't really doing that,
And what they give you for feedback? Because I know Regal obviously took me aside and gave me feedback on the match and then the promo room. Who gave you the feedback? Was it Regal that you worked with?
Regal wasn't even at the 2 shows that we did. He was busy with other things. So Scott Armstrong ran it with the head referee. But Scott Armstrong was a big fan of mine. Like he put me over a lot. One of the things he said though is like, I'm not big enough muscular wise, he's like, you're a great hand type thing, but we're looking for stars and guys who are super jacked. So if you can get nice and big, he might be more interested in taking a look at you. But he told me I had great footwork and great movement in the ring, and all my stuff was solid. So like my WWE experience, like I was super pleased with it because I like came out of it knowing I didn't suck in their eyes, So that's always a positive when you're a wrestler is going there and not having them tell you, oh, you fucking suck, quit the business now, you're a waste of fucking time. So I felt like awesome about that.
What I didn't like about it, I guess my only takeaway, I had a great experience. My match was with some kid that was from Missouri. He literally was in the business 6 months, and he didn't look anything like. I mean, he didn't have a gimmick. He didn't. It just was terrible. But we did the best that we could in there. I just was surprised that he was there. So I think that they can do a better job of screening some of the people they invite to these places, because that. Even we were talking to Cannon about that, and he was pissed off about it, and other workers were pissed off that this person got invited after 6 months, and it was a clusterfuck. Sure. But, it's one of those experiences, though, but they told me the same thing. It wasn't that I wasn't muscular enough, it just I wasn't tall enough, and they already have Daniel Bryan, so, what can I do? On
short guys, man. Like he liked my height and stuff like that, and he even asked me how old I was, and I was like, I'm 31, and he was like, oh, that's perfect, man. And I was like, what? 31's perfect? That's cool. Like, all right, I guess.
DDP started when he was 36, man, so you still got some years to go. You're ready to go.
Yeah, I guess, man, but.
Well, sweet. Yeah, no, that was good. It was cool seeing you on TV, and I don't think I've ever seen you with bleach blonde hair before, so that was unique to see. Let's talk about Juggalo Championship Wrestling. When did you get involved with JCW?
My first match there was the biggest show of the year. It's called Bloody Mania, and it's at the Gathering every year. So my first match actually in JCW was a Bloody Mania main event where it was me and Silas as the young altar boys with Holy Trent Acid against ICP and Sabu. So that was fucking awesome for me. It was my first match ever there, and super high profile. But like the character I had was kind of blah, and we were just kind of like Trent Acid hanger-oners, and like me and Caleb fucking hated Trent Acid. He was such a cocksucker to us, to where he was talking shit to us about me and like learning from Hero, because apparently he hated Hero. And me and Caleb, we went and told Corporal like, hey, you need to say something to this guy. We're about to beat the fuck out of him,
Right.
But eventually Joe, he came up with the Weedman character for me and gave me that, and then that's been my shit ever since, It's perfect for me.
What's the status of JCW right now?
What's the what?
The status of JCW. Are they still running shows?
They do, at the Gathering every year, they probably do like 4 shows, and then they'll maybe do like 2 or 3 other ones throughout the year. But it's not as much as they used to when they were doing like 2 monthly pay-per-views for a while. They were doing a lot of shows for a minute, but they don't run as much as they used to.
So do you think that you have a stronger following under the Dysfunction name or a stronger following under the Weedman gimmick?
I've made way more money as the Weedman, I think. Well, I don't know. It's kind of equal. I take that back. Like a lot of, like, the fans that the Weedman has doesn't really carry over to the wrestling, like indie wrestling. And the same thing with like Dysfunction. It doesn't carry over there where people don't know that I have an alternate persona. Like the JCW fans don't know that I'm Dysfunction other places. They just think I'm the fucking Weedman. I wear a mask there too, so it's not even like, so they're both. Like on my Twitter, I have both the names on there, and I have both pictures, so I just try to include both.
Yeah, and you got that crazy fan in Japan, right? That's making you all these sweet-ass pictures that he keeps posting.
Yeah, some dude in Japan has been making me shit for like a couple years now, and he always makes awesome graphics. He's a cool dude.
You ever work in Japan?
No, I don't have like a passport to leave the country. So.
Okay. That's one thing I never got to do, and I thought that'd obviously be fucking awesome. But one name that you mentioned in your first match with JCW was Sabu. I guess following you on Twitter and being in touch with you on Facebook, it seems like Sabu is a big influence or a big mentor, I guess per se, to your career or to your wrestling career.
He's cool, man. I hang out with him a lot. Like there's a bunch of dudes that I loved when I was like 14 in ECW that were just my shit, who have actually became like personal friends now as I've gotten older. Like Steve Carino is so awesome, man, and somebody I loved a lot when I was younger as like a heel, and like now, like we're real good friends, and it's great seeing him all the time, and he's just a good dude. Same with Sabu and Rhino and a few guys like that. I've become really good friends with a lot of guys I was super fans of.
What's the outside of ICW? What's the hot promotions now that you are working for that you're extremely proud of?
I really like BCW in Wisconsin, but I don't look for anything that's like super hot indie wise. Like I did my last CZW like death match this year, so I don't know if I'm super on that kind of a radar or anything. I just wrestle in Wisconsin mostly because I make decent money and I enjoy my friends and. It's good times, man. I don't stress on wrestling like a lot of people do. A lot of people like get really shitty about it or feel wrestling owes them something, but I'm just happy to be there, man.
Yeah.
I've wrestled for 14 years nonstop. I've never been hurt. I've never taken any breaks. So I'm just happy, man.
And that's the thing that shocks me the most with you specifically, because you recently announced that you're no longer doing death matches, and you did quite a few of them. I guess the first question is, why, man? Like, why did I worked shows with Sick Nick Mondo, and I watched his DVD, and I cringe every time I see the Weed Whacker shot. And I'm just thinking, that obviously that's really extreme, but I know that you've done some crazy-ass shit, too. Where along the lines did you look at that and say, this is something that I want to get involved in?
Well, like, I wanted to do it because of, like, I really liked the style when I was younger. I was really into, like, blood and gore. So I was really into that, and then Mid-American had its, tournament, and then IWA, and, like, doing death matches was good for me. It got me a lot of places and stuff like that, but, I'm, like, 31 right now, so, like, I don't want to be one of those dudes who's, like, 36, 37 doing death matches and, like, being fat and sucking, so I thought
I read online about some death matches today because I was excited to ask you about it. I read somewhere where there's certain death matches where like the gimmick is that guys will like wrap their hands and put it in glue and then put it in glass before the match starts, so they'll have glass shreds on their fist. Is that really happening?
Yeah, that happens. But I mean, there's ways to do that kind of stuff. I mean, death matches, they suck and they hurt, but there's still some illusion to them. Like you don't like when you put those things in your hands. You're not like putting jagged edges on your fist and punching somebody in the face for real. You know what I'm saying? It's cosmetic a little bit.
Sounds crazy. Whenever I read it, I was like, "Oh my goodness!" If I was watching somebody do this, I wouldn't care if it was shreds or not. It looks crazy.
Yeah, the last one I had for CZW, they used this glass that was like they run at the Flyers like practice facility, and some of the glass they used was from like the glass in the like hockey rink that got shredded or like smashed. So like that glass cut the fuck out of me, dude. Like I got a huge gash on my elbow, and then me and Danny did these spots where I had him in a lion tamer in the glass, and he got out of it and put me in a crossface, and that shit gashed my head bad. It was probably one of the bloodiest, glorious matches I had for my last one, but. He was on pay-per-view, and it was in not Philadelphia, it was in New Jersey, and, there's a huge crowd there. So, I had more death matches booked after that, but once I had that match, I canceled them all and was like, this is my last one. This is the biggest one I'm ever going to do. I'm not going to go to IWA Mid-South and do a death match in the fucking parking lot of a strip club when I just probably had the best death match of my life for CZW in New Jersey on a huge show. So I just kind of... I canceled all those bookings and made that my last one. I still do stuff with like chairs and ladders and an occasional thumbtacks, but I'm not doing anything with light tubes or glass or anything stupid like that no more.
So the question then arises that I know as an independent worker, we're not provided health insurance or anything like that from the promotions. If you have health insurance, it's because you have a shoot gig that's paying for it, or you're going through Obamacare or whatever the hell it is.
Sure.
How does some of these guys go into these matches then, knowing that they don't have health insurance, and if something happens, their payday from that day is not covering their damn hospital bills?
I mean, you just do it, man. I don't know, you just roll the dice and hope for the best. That's all I ever do.
Is that the same? Is that the same way then too? Because you don't know. I mean, if you're meeting somebody for the first time, and I don't know if CZW is different, but you have no fucking idea if they have something or not. And you hear the story of Abdullah the Butcher and the situation that happened with the lawsuits, and that's like one of those things where it's like, holy shit, I don't really think about this that often. Is that something that you thought about?
Not really, but I wasn't never like wrestling dudes I didn't know or like they weren't good friends of mine. Not saying that they couldn't just randomly do shit or anything, but I never felt like weird about that or scared about my friends or anything like that. CZW, like they do test their guys before the tournament death and stuff like that, so it's not like everybody just does it randomly. So what are you gonna do?
That's like, those are the couple things that I was wondering about, because I know that CZW obviously has a medical staff there, or they have people there that help clean you guys up and take thumbtacks out of you or whatever it might be.
Probably like the top of death matches. Like that's the top place you can go in America. I don't think there's really anywhere else that like comes close to them, or even just an all around production, how they treat their guys, just stuff like that. I think CZW is fucking number one in death matches and different stuff since then. But Danny Havoc's my dude. That's probably the best deathmatch guy in the world, I think. He's got a broken ankle right now, so there's a question about.
Right.
I think he broke his ankle, or his foot or his ankle wrestling for Big Japan, and so he's a little sidelined.
So you've been wrestling all these years, and you know that this wrestling business is filled with assholes for promoters and people who are, if you're a promoter, you're just kind of a shady character majority of the times, or you've dealt with numerous ones, as have I. At what point did you then say, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to start my own promotion and start running shows for Insane Championship Wrestling?
I started running shows because I wanted to book angles and characters and create guys. I didn't there's guys you hear about who leave some company and go start a company because they're not getting booked anywhere. That's never my issue. I wanted to just have a creative aspect in wrestling and write angles and stories and stuff like that. That's the main reason why I did that. It wasn't because I was like, oh, I'm not getting booked, I'm mad, I'm going to go make myself the champ of my own company type shit, Right.
Well, I'm just looking at your card for your December 19th show. Now, is this a benefit show for Silas, your brother-in-law, who broke his leg in Ring of Honor Wrestling, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys have a huge packed show, and it's December 19th. Where's the show at? What time's it start?
It's at a venue called the Metal Grill in Cudahy, Wisconsin. Doors open at 7. The show don't start till 8. But we have fans who get there at 5:36, so it's a little crazy.
So I drove past that place. I drove past that place. I literally live maybe a mile and a half north of that place, and I actually, so I drove past it because I was interested in this show here, especially. I want to stop in and see everybody, especially you and Carmine, because I haven't seen you guys in fucking forever. But how many people can you guys fit in there for fans?
145 to 160.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, it doesn't look huge from the outside, but I bet you the crowd itself is probably pretty loud.
It's a cool venue for, especially our DVDs that we shoot from Smart Mart and different things like that. So it's cool. We had a dude who fucked us over that we were renting a smaller, lower level ring from. And when we had the lower level ring, we could, fit more ringside and just more people in general. But now we got to use a fucking 18-foot ring in there, and it's a little rough, but we make do.
And what match, outside of your match, because you're in the heavyweight championship match, what match do you think is going to be the best match on the card outside of yours?
I can't really think about it. I think just the appearances are going to be real cool. Having Carmine there, he hasn't been on one of my shows in probably 2 or 3 years.
Right.
There's a lot of dudes coming back that day, and just a lot of people who are helping out Caleb. So I assume everybody's going to work super hard and have good matches. So
does Hardcore Craig work anymore, or is he just coming back for this show?
No, he works for Pro Wrestling Blitz in Illinois and does a bunch of other different stuff. I just wrestled him at the Gathering this year. Him and Paulie Tomaselli were the haters. It's usually Vito, but he retired. So Hardcore Craig kind of took his spot. So, he's around, man. He's fucking jacked, dude. If he had the physique that he had, when he was 25, 26, that he has now, he'd probably have a job with WWE or something like that, He's fucking cut up.
And what's your cousin doing nowadays? Does he work anymore?
No, he like retired 3 times. Came back, that old song. He just has like a decent job now, and he toys with the idea of wrestling, you know, but it's weird. It's a weird situation for him.
Yeah,
and for those he wants to do it, but.
And for those of you guys listening too, Bobby Valentino was his name back in the day when I worked him a couple times, and those matches were so much fun with him because you were pretty much like our agent for those matches. You would say, "Hey, Renny, do this move or whatever," and they were cool.
That was the show in the Piggly Wiggly parking lot, correct? Where Dark Child was supposed to jump off the sign but never did. And
that was Horse of Psychopath's retirement, and then he came back, and I gave him shit all the time for it. But yeah, it was. Yeah. And then I worked him in a sand pit up in ACW, too, at that volleyball court place. So I worked him a couple times. So it was cool catching up with him at the first wrestling show. And obviously, you couldn't make it. You didn't make it because of the Packers, and my Niners beat your Packers. But it looks like this year your Packers are probably going to win the whole fucking thing.
Yeah, your Niners suck, dude.
They ain't good. They aren't good, man. But if people want to get ICW stuff, they're on Facebook, Insane Championship Wrestling. You said you're at Smart Mark Video, correct? Is where all the DVDs are?
We send stuff Smart Mark does the digital downloads for like $5, so you can get the whole show for $5. So
awesome. And the big show is December 19th at the Metal Bar and Grill in Cudahy, Wisconsin. Dude, if people obviously want to get in touch with you, you're on Twitter. You're at the Weedman JCW. Yeah, this is good, dude. I haven't talked to you in a while, so I'm glad you're able to come on and kind of share some shit in the timeline with us. The 19th, I'm going to try to be there, man. I want to come in and stop around and check the show out because I haven't seen any Wisconsin stuff. I'm here to show the world. I'm here to show the world.
Dolph Ziggler is here to show you the world, and I'm here to tell you about the world of professional wrestling. This is Renny D, an 11-year veteran of the professional wrestling business and host of The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast available on iTunes, Stitcher, PodBean, and YouTube. Subscribe today and follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast for more inside information on the world of professional wrestling.